The White Scars, known for their lightning-fast warfare, are clad in white armor with accents of red tribal markings. Today, I'll show you how to achieve this classic color scheme for your miniatures, ensuring they truly stand out on the tabletop. Let's get into the video. To begin with, we're starting with Ulf 1 Grey over a Grey Seer primer. Now, I'm doing this from top down, and I am using an airbrush. You can, however, use a Drybrush and just Drybrush all the highest points. You'll come out with the same effect. It might just be a little less smoother. However, if you are using an airbrush, then please wear a respirator mask, as you are atomizing paint and you are using chemicals that can cause long-term effects. So yeah, please wear a mask, open up some windows, and you should be good to go. Next up is Tamiya Flat White. Now with this, Tamiya paints are amazing for airbrushing. They go on so smooth. So if you haven't ever used Tamiya, then definitely pick yourself up some. However, you do need to use their own brand of thinner, just because I don't think they interact well with other thinners. I've not actually tried it, as it's recommended just to use their thinner. I think the paints are somewhat different to regular acrylics. So all we're doing is just continuing doing just downward motions with the airbrush. We're trying to get inside of the Ulf 1 highlights. Next we move on to Soul Blight Grey. It's a Citadel color shade, and all you're looking to do here is just pin wash every recess. We're just going around the model and just adding this to all the white armor panels that we've just painted. Now you do want to take your time with this. Try not to overload your paintbrush with the shade. If you do find yourself overspilling some of the shade onto the white armor panels, then we can just get a clean paintbrush, get some water on it, apply it to the area, get a dry paintbrush and just soak it all up quickly, and then you should be good to go. If you do notice some staining, depending on where it is, you can just apply the previous layers of greys and whites that we used. Next up is Bold Titanium White from Pro Aquila. We are just going around the model and just edge highlighting all of the areas. Note that you don't actually have to highlight every single area. Like I tend not to do it just because, one, I'm fairly lazy. Two, I find it doesn't look that great. Like I don't ever edge highlight within the shoulders just because I just don't think it looks great. And if you agree, then you don't have to do it. Just because something's done and people do it in a specific way doesn't mean you have to. So yeah, you'll be fine just to not do that. However, if you feel like it, then go ahead. For the final highlight, all we're using is Cold White by Vallejo, and this is just going to be like small little area just inside where we highlighted with Bold Titanium. You can even dot highlight if you want to. I tend to, on like the brightest areas, just do like very minimal dots and highlights. Not much to say on this next part, besides be careful, as we are now blocking in all the black areas. These are things like the gun casing, chainsword casing, the leather pouches, the tubing, etc. If you do find that you overspill or you accidentally go onto the white armor panels, depending on the location, you may need to go back over with the Grey Seer, Ulf 1 Grey, Flat White. Make sure you get a good layer, because black is notoriously hard to layer over with light colours. Next up is my favourite part. We're adding the red to the model. We're starting with Mephiston red and we're just adding it to the Aquila. Again, take your time with this. Obviously we're painting over white armour. We don't want to make any marks that we don't have to. We just want to take our time, be as neat as possible and avoid any mistakes. Next up is just putting some non-oil over the top of the Mephiston red. Load up the brush. You don't have to have too much because we don't want to cause any overspills. However, have enough on so that you can get them into the recesses of the Aquila. This will dull down the Mephiston red, and then after this we'll go over it once it's dried. While the non-oil is drying, we're just going to block in the leather pouch. For this, I'm just using a very basic scheme, and it's just going to consist of Rhinox hide and Mournfang brown. I'm not a big fan of painting leather. I find it kind of boring. However, for this, yeah, I'm going to keep it fairly basic, because the main things we want to look at is the white armor and the red accents, like the red tribal markings. On this step, all we're doing is painting over with Mephiston red, just to bring back some of the saturation from where we dulled it down with the non-oil. We're looking to cover the majority of the Aquila, ensuring that we leave the non-oil within the recesses. After this, we'll be adding all the highlights, which will make the Aquila really stand out. Now with Evil Sun Scarlet, all we're doing is layering over the previous step, and what I like to do is just go halfway on each part of the Aquila and just highlight each edge. With this, you want to take your time. Obviously you don't want to make any mistakes, so just gently layer over the top of the previous layer. Now with Wild Rider Red, you want to just get inside of the Evil Sun Scarlet, and you can even dot highlight if you want to. This is going to be the brightest highlight that we're going to do, and this is what's going to really make the Aquila stand out. As you can see, it's already starting to look really, really nice. In these next clips, I'm going to be showing you how to paint the tribal markings for White Scars. And for this, all you want to do is just grab the red of your preference. Currently I'm using Mephiston red, and all I'm doing, placing some little dots on the knee pad, and what I'm going to be doing is colouring in half of that knee pad. As you can see, I'm not doing the dot to dot just yet. I'm colouring in and I'm going up to these dots. So the way I connect the dots is just by colouring it and building a sort of angle to each dot. And just remember that you can turn around the model. I do it in this clip several times. I turn it upside down just to get better angles. This is essentially how I approach all my sort of freehands that I do. I don't really do too much freehand just because I'm not the best at it, but I do enjoy it quite a lot. Another tip for freehanding is just getting a piece of paper and just practicing the shape, symbol, whatever you're doing, just practice on a piece of paper first, and then even getting a test model and just practicing on there before you do it onto your actual painted model. Doing it this way, you'll hopefully reduce the amount of mistakes that. So all you want to do is just continuously build up to the dots and connect the lines once you feel you're close enough. Obviously, if it doesn't look straight, you can make the angles bigger and then try and straighten them up. You can see that I'm not happy with what I've done, so I do try go back and just straighten up the line. As I'm doing this, I just want to make sure that I've got a nice solid layer. Next we've got Evil Sun Scarlet, and all we want to be doing with this is just edge highlighting the previous Mephiston layer that we just done. You don't want to go crazy with this, you just want to be very gentle, very slow, as you don't want to mess up any of the previous work you've just done. You want to make sure you've got a nice fine tipped brush, and we're just going to brush down the edge. Now with Wild Rider Red, we just want to go in and dot highlight the previous Evil Sun Scarlet lines that we just made. Next up is the lenses, and for these I'm doing the glowing green lenses. I've got a video already out about this, but I'll quickly breeze over it. Essentially all you need to do is layer on your warpstone glow, and then after that we go on to just glazing underneath the lens. Next we mix mute green and ice yellow. We just layer on top of the layer that we just done, and then we edge highlight the lower lens. Once we've done that, we just whack on some pure ice yellow on top, and just, you can do a small dot or you can like layer it over the previous layers, just keeping it inside of that previous layer. And then for the final step, we just want to add some green fluoro paint, and that's just how we get the OSL popping a bit more. Of course, you can always just change the colors about. You don't need to use these specific colors. You can change them to red, you can change them to blue, you can change them to pink, whatever color lens you want. I'm just going to quickly highlight the black, and with this we're going to use Skaven Blight Dinge. I like using this color just to highlight black just because it's very subtle. If you like to use different grey to highlight black with, then obviously just go for that. I'm not doing too much with this just because I want to focus more on the armor, the tribal patterns and the basing. Next up we're just blocking in all metallic areas, and for this I'm just using Lead Belcher. You can use whatever metallic paint you like, your favourites. I just tend to stick with Lead Belcher or Iron Warriors. Iron Warriors usually for like a darker tone, and Lead Belcher for like a more brighter tone. Once dry, we're just going to come over with some non-oil. Now you want to make sure that you don't overload your brush with this. Get a good amount on there and just go over all metallic areas. This will dull it down, and then we can go over with some nice highlights. For highlighting the metal once the non-oil is dried, we're just going to use Stormhost Silver. Now this will really make the metal shine and bring out the metallics. For this I like to edge highlight and volumetric highlight, which just means painting like a large area instead of just the edges. I feel like it brings out more of a true metallic metal look. Awesome. Now that the main model is done, we're going to move on to the base, and first of all we're just going to start by whacking some PVA glue on top of the base. Once it glues on, we can then start putting on some debris. I've got Army Painter's Battlefield rocks. You can use whatever basing materials that you want. Since I'm making a Martian base, I feel like rocks are probably the way to go. But obviously if anything fits into your scheme, your army scheme, go for it. As well as the rocks, I like to use this mixture that I have. It's a mixture of sand, grit and tiny little rocks. Once this has been applied, I usually use a hairdryer just to speed up the process and dry the PVA glue. Next up, over a black primer, we're just going to be applying Rhinox hide. This is going to give us a dark brown tone underneath, as we're going to be using a technical paint which is going to crackle and is going to show through. Obviously again, through this whole process I've been using a hairdryer just to speed up the drying process. Once the Rhinox hide is dry, we then come over with Martian Iron Earth. Now I put this over absolutely everything. the thicker the layer, the bigger the cracks you'll get. Again, if you do live in the UK like me, the weather's gotten colder, so it's going to take a while to dry, so to really speed this process up, you'll want to use a hairdryer. To add some different varieties of colours, I'm coming in with some pigments. Now, I'm using dark rust and light rust from AK, and these are what's going to be placed in the shadows and at the highest points. It will just give some variety. So I'm just putting dark rust in the shadows underneath the rocks, a little bit on the bottoms of the rock. Pigments can be fairly messy, so I would suggest just using like a tray or something so you can catch any of the pigments that do spill. All we want to do is just apply some water. You can also apply different varnishes to help seal in the pigments. Next, as mentioned, I'm just coming in with light rust. I'm not drying it, I'm just going to come in, just put a little bit on the tops of the rocks and in the locations where it's going to be a little bit brighter. This will just add a bit more variety. Then again, all I'm doing is just sealing it with the water again. After that, then I'm going to be drying it with the hairdryer. Once the pigments are dry, I'm coming in with Adrag's Earthshade, and all I'm doing with this is just dabbing it on. I'm not trying to put on too much. If I do put on too much, I do tend to soak some up, but this is just going to darken down all of the pigments. In this part, just be careful, you don't want to move the shade around too much, as it will reactivate the pigments. Once that's dry, I'm just coming in with Tusk or Fur, and all I'm doing is trying to bring back the redness to the base. It's just going to be a light dry brush. For the final step, all we're doing is coming in with Tyrant's Skull. Now this is a Citadel dry paint, and I really hate the dry paints. I do not recommend this. For alternatives, you can use Shabti Bone, and you just wanted to bring a very, very light dry brush to the highest points. For the final step, all I'm doing is adding a black base rim. Now you can do this whatever color you want. If it's your army color like Steel Legion Wrap, then go for it. The base, the model is complete. If you stuck with me throughout this whole entire video, then I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. If you have any feedback, then please leave it in the comments. If you like the video, then smash that like button. I'm aiming to bring a video out at least once a week. If you want to request anything, then leave it in the comments. Hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. I'll see you all in the next video.